Singapore-based Polybee has what one investor calls a rare combination of high technical defensibility and immediate bankable ROI, which is pretty unusual in this space.
So at Polybee, we are building physical AI agents that turn unpredictable produce farms into data-driven factories. Now, for centuries, produce farming has been helplessly unpredictable. And our thesis is that the root cause of that is lack of visibility and control on farming operations. So our physical AI agent operates a fleet of autonomous drones that runs around the farm and scouts every single plant and gathers intelligence on it. We're performing multiple jobs for farmers, such as forecasting yield, scouting for stress, and where relevant, performing jobs even like pollination. Right? Now, each of these contribute towards higher visibility and control on farming operations, and that's how we enhance profitability of produce farms. The way we charge our customers is a fixed fee per hectare, and the expectation is that it yields them at least 3x to 5x return within the same crop cycle. In order to enhance visibility and control, we've built these autonomous agents or physical AI agents. We call them so because they're getting jobs done in the farm.
Yes.
So for example, if you look at what we're doing currently, which is forecasting yield, scouting for stress and pollination, all of these are real jobs that need to be done in the farm today. And one of the core capabilities that we really focused on and took us a while to build was end-to-end automation. Right? Now, if you look at any of these tasks, they're performed by drones that are self-launching, self-recharging, and they do not require any user touch points whatsoever at any stage, right? And that's a key capability that we had to build in, because if we don't do that, the product's just not going to scale, right? And we've seen enough examples of that in the sector where there were drones involved and they had to be operated by someone, and sort of that was not sufficiently taken care of by companies or service providers. But we've baked that capability into our platform where we operate off-the-shelf self-recharging drones. And essentially our physical AI agent acts as the central nervous system of farming operations, right? Where we gather this intelligence and we give key insights on when to go for a harvest, what volume to expect, and so on and so forth. So we're actually filling in a couple of gaps in today's operations, right? One is the accuracy of the metrics that growers would try to gather, right? Now, for example, in produce crops that we work on, they can be in open fields or in greenhouses. You need to know exactly, for example, if it's a fruiting crop, what the fruit load is like, how many of these fruits are ripened, how fast are they ripening as a function of weather, and if it's vegetable crops, how fast are they growing, are they within the quality and the specs that we need, right? So you need to have objective metrics in order to assess what's in your quote-unquote inventory, if you will, and how fast is it maturing, for us to go harvest it, right? Accuracy is sort of not even a metric that can be measured today, because all of this is eyeballed, right? You've got growers walking around the field, sampling a few plants, kind of getting a feel of it, and basing decisions on top of it. Growers will be the first ones to admit that is not how they would want to run their business,
yes,
right? The second gap that we're filling for is the sample size, right? If you look at produce crops, what's inherent to them is the lack of uniformity and variability in how they develop, right? No matter how advanced the genetics are, even in greenhouses, where the controlled environment is supposed to take care of this, you would still see a lot of variability.
Yes.
So we're sampling a significant fraction of the number of plants that are, which is not otherwise possible for growers to do. So those are the key advantages and those are the key gaps that we're filling for growers. Our product is fully commercial, so we've launched our product at multiple locations where it's operational on 100% capacity of their farms. But that said, as you I think you're alluding to, growers will want to first build confidence in the system.
Yes.
So the way our sales motion is designed is that in stage one of a deployment, it's still commercial, but it's over a significant enough fraction of their farming operations, right? So probably we target about 10 to 20% of the farm area for a few months, where the product is deployed and they can compare that to their status quo, right? Now this comparison can be drawn across the yield forecast that we make versus what they make.
Yes.
It can be drawn across, for example, if it's pollination, then what's the yield that they're getting with our system versus status quo. And that gives sufficient time and space for everyone to evaluate the ROI of which we are very confident of, but we respect the growers' a preference for this stage. And once we cross that stage of 10-20% of the farming area, then we're ready to scale the solution across their whole farming operation. So if you look at the key applications that our agent performs, which is forecasting yield, pollination, and scouting for stress, we can go through them one by one quickly, right? So if you look at forecasting, what matters is the accuracy, and if our recommendations for harvest timing are leading to higher yield,
Yes.
right? Now we've already assessed this across open field vegetable crops commercially, wherein when our recommendations are followed in crops like spinach and broccoli, our customers have walked away with at least 10 to 15% higher yield, right? And sometimes these recommendations can be quite subtle in terms of the timing. A couple of days here and there can amount to a yield difference of up to 10%, right? So we've already proven time and again across multiple crops, varieties, regions, that if our recommendations are followed for harvest timing, growers can walk away with 10 to 15% higher yield, right? And those growers have already commercialized the solution. Then the other application being pollination, which we are just about scaling up for a couple of crops, strawberries as well as tomatoes. We see yield gains of anywhere between 5 to 10%, depending on the crop and variety and region, compared to status quo pollination. And in fact, what's super interesting is that these yield gains are not just at any time of the year, these are in shoulder seasons where the price is high. So our agents perform pollination on self-fertile crops or self-pollinating crops that are grown in greenhouses. Today it's primarily two crops, tomatoes and strawberries.
Yeah.
How it works is pretty straightforward. The drones leverage the turbulent airflow in their downwash in their propellers to vibrate flowers at just the right frequency, just the way a bumblebee would pollinate these flowers. And those vibrations is what ends up dislodging the pollen grains and successfully pollinating the flowers. And if you look at those regions where you do have bumblebees, our value proposition is not so much replacing bees, it's more to do with complementing bees where they're not really doing the work. We're enhancing pollination success rate in shoulder seasons where bees are very difficult to manage, right? And that's where the gains really are. When it comes to those regions where you do not have access to bumblebees even, such as let's say Australia and a bunch of countries in South America, pollination has to be done manually. So you've got people going around with leaf blowers or with sticks that they whack the plants with, hoping that leads to successful pollination. So we're taking labor out of that equation entirely.